Greetings adventurers, my name is Iris and I will be your guide throughout the next few minutes as we discuss character creation. I don't mean selecting a race and a class and jumping into a game, I mean creating the actual backbone for your character, their full name, any alias that they might have, their age and occupation. These details only need to be basic and you don't have to share these with anyone that you don't want to. The same goes for the character's personality. Let's say your guy has a tendency to flip back and forth between personas and emotions. You don't need to let anyone else know that because they can find that out through role-playing with you. But you, the player, have to have a firm outline of what it is that you want to create, and to work within that for at least the first few weeks of roleplay, because you can always expand upon that later. One good way to get started, if you're not sure what it is that you want to create, is to look for a good face claim. To face claim is to find a good drawing or a photo of a real person that you want your character to look like, so you can go off that image in your head. For example, I have a board on Pinterest linked below with some interesting character concepts that I've found over the last few months, and I've used those to inspire characters in writing and roleplay. One thing to watch, however, if you're going to use a face claim of a drawing, is that you're giving credit to the artist if you're going to use it in a profile, but we'll get into that in another video. Once you've got your face claim, you can start branching out from that. You've got your character's face in your head, and now you can put a name to it. There's some really great name generators attached to most gaming resource sites. World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, for example, have many different generator sites, which gives you lore-friendly names which fit that particular universe's naming conventions for your character's race. If you're unfamiliar with what naming conventions are, they're simply outlines which you can choose to follow, which most NPCs in lore and in-game have similar codes to. For example, Night Elves from World of Warcraft have surnames linking to either their profession, class, or to nature. Here's a few I've managed to generate in just a few clicks. Now, let's say your game universe doesn't have those linear conventions. A good way to find a name for your character is to work out what it is they're going to do. Lots of surnames in the real world link to jobs or places, and you can dig through their meanings on things like ancestry sites, or if you're looking for a first name, lots of baby naming sites give meanings for the names that they have listed. Alternatively, you can just make up a name, and if it sounds good, you can use it. It's all down to your personal preference, you don't have to pick a name from a list. Moving on to age. Age is difficult in a lot of games. World of Warcraft has a vague few tables on different sites with different information on how their races age, and if you're not sure you can always speculate using middle-aged or young adult if you're trying to give your roleplay buddies a good gist of how old your character is. If you're looking to have a character that's lived through certain things in the lore, you're going to need to know the era in which those lore events happened if you want your character to recall on any of it. Of course, your character could have just heard stories or simply word of mouth and not necessarily have the best recollection of those events. This will save you from not necessarily being so confident in the lore, but that's for another video. Now we're into the juicy stuff, your character's occupation. This could be something as simple as a barmaid or stable hand. Alternatively, if you're planning on roleplaying a lore class, there's often extensive lists to the traits and the stigmas for and against these classes in lore. If you've seen the term RPG class, you'll know that there's certain abilities and paths which players want their characters to take which are not necessarily available in the base game classes. In the Warcraft universe, you'll find many RPG classes, which, whilst they might not have aspects too dissimilar to those classes available in-game, you'll see that they have a lot more specifics, and perhaps a lot more research might be needed if you're willing to play these classes. I've included a link to a list of Warcraft's RPG classes if you're interested in checking those out. Alternatively, if you want a bit more realism and a bit more simplicity, your character could be a bounty hunter or a mercenary. They could be a civilian that just so happens to get tied up in a lot of trouble simply by walking in and out of strange situations. Sometimes, the more simpler the character, the better, because that way you have a blank canvas to build on top of in most cases. So, you've got your name, race, age, and your job. Now you get to pick your alignment and personality. Often these will go hand in hand. If you're not sure what an alignment is, I've included a link to the D&D alignment system below for you to check out. Let's take my favourite alignment to play, for example, Chaotic Neutral, the I give zero fucks section of society. Chaotic characters tend to live and act for themselves over others, which could mean that your character is selfish, or more so than others at least. You'd imagine with a word like chaotic describing you, you'd act on a whim, at the drop of a hat, and you'd be more the type to act first and think later. Now, this doesn't mean that your character's a villain. The neutral side to these characters is what balances them really nicely between good and evil, and it's also what makes them really interesting to watch play out. They could be your best friend one minute and your worst enemy the next, and it all depends on what suits them in that exact moment. Now you've got the basics for your character fleshed out, you can get into making a profile for them on your roleplay forums so that people can see and read the fruits of your efforts. Join me in my next video where I'll be going through the basics of profile creation as well as a few tips on how to make your profiles more engaging for the reader.